Hello, everyone. Good morning. I know I was hoping a lot more interactive kind of a thing, but that's okay. We'll take what we have, right? Um, Quick introduction. My name is Pawan Katharikuppam, and I'm a vice president at Goldman Sachs in engineering, and I work on their cloud platform. It's a cloud center of excellence within Goldman Sachs engineering, and this is an area which I'm really passionate about. And I've actually changed my career track to this fairly recently. And I have loved it since then. So when the opportunity came, when Goldman Sachs was asked to see what you'd want to present in a workshop, I volunteered for this topic because I strongly believe that in software engineering field, at least, cloud is undeniably going to be the focus for almost everybody in all aspects over the next few years. And whatever learnings I had in my journey, my exciting journey so far, I wanted to kind of share, exchange with perspectives with you participants, and see if there's anything I could do to help you guys with your own journeys. You could be fairly new to you may not be even doing software engineering, or you might have heard about cloud, may not have, or you already have been working hands-on cloud. Wherever you are, I wanted this to be a session where you could exchange your perspectives, and I can talk also about what I have learned, what we are doing at Goldman Sachs for cloud. It's not a sales pitch or anything, but more for you to be aware of, like, at an enterprise scale, how we're thinking about it. And then definitely could help you with any other suggestions or guidance that you could want to ask me of. Okay, with that, we'll get started. Just going to, there's a presentation that I did not prepare for this specific event. It was already pre-made for a different session. Hey, Brian, was there something you wanted to add? I
Yeah,
can't hear
would you like me to add anybody in who requests to share their audio and video, just to keep it more interactive, like you mentioned during the intro?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, if you don't mind, if you're available, like I said, I'd like it to be as interactive as possible, sir.
Okay, awesome. So anybody who is free to share their audio and video, just you can click request to share audio and video, and when I see that request, I can let you into the chat as well, so your video will be shown. You can message me if you have any issues with that.
Right. Yeah. So back to my presentation. I don't really like to do just these one-way presentations, but I wanted to at least have some material as like a referencing. But I did not prepare anything here from scratch. It was already a pre-made one for another hackathon before, but it had relevant content which I wanted to spend just a few minutes. So this session shouldn't be like about the presentation, maybe another 5-10 minutes and we're done with it, and let's keep it interactive with other content, right? So without further ado, let me just switch over. All right. Like I said, I'm from Goldman Sachs Engineering, and for those who may or may not have heard about Goldman Sachs, we're a financial institution, and what we do is a number of different things in this industry. We are a bank. We are a fully digital bank. We also do investments on behalf of our clients, and also we market securities. We help companies with IPOs, all sorts of things, right? It's one of the large, I shouldn't say large, but one of the large institutions, financial institutions in the world, especially focused on mergers and acquisitions. It's a leader in that space. But what I'm most excited about working at Goldman Sachs is the focus on engineering that we have, right? In my own personal opinion, I believe in the financial industry at this scale. The Goldman Sachs engineering is one of the best out there in this industry at this scale, right? So we've had a lot of exciting journey in our engineering, but let me go to the next slide where I'll show some more facts where we are, as you can imagine, all over the world. Of course, concentrated in Europe and Americas, not surprisingly. A lot of these are also like, not just, a lot of them are sales offices, but a lot of them also have large development offices. For example, in Americas, New York, New Jersey have large campuses. In addition, Salt Lake City has a big presence, but the area where we are most focused on in Americas is Dallas. Right now, it's slightly lagging behind the Salt Lake and New York, New Jersey campuses, but there is a tremendous amount of focus in the Dallas office. It has about 3,000 plus, people in the Dallas office now, but the expectation, ambition is that it's going to grow much more significantly over the next 2 to 3 years, and could be the largest after New York campus in Americas for Goldman Sachs. And this office is across all the various teams, right? Engineering, sales teams, research, operations, all of them included. Move on. Yes. So sometimes, some folks at other campuses, when I used to ask, like, what do you guys do with engineering work in finance? Isn't it all about, like, people with MBAs or doing research on various companies and things like that? But the answer I give them is that, like, engineering has an extremely huge role to play for not just our company, right? Any company in this day and age, as you might hopefully agree with me, that it could be a huge differentiator, which we ourselves have seen in Goldman's case. We have, in terms of numbers, right? Like more than 30% of the people at Goldman Sachs are in engineering, right? That means 1 in 3 is actually a coder, a developer, or some way related to the engineering organization, which translates to 12,000 globally, just engineers, like, because it's a firm of about 36,000 globally, and one third of that is roughly 12,000 is what we have in engineering, which is by any aspect, it's a huge engineering organization. And there's obviously tons of code being written every day, every month, as you can see. But I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But my own point is that one good example I always give people about how it has been a differentiator for us. When I say it, I mean engineering, is the product we had launched about 3 years or so ago called Marcus. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's 100% digital bank for retail customers like us. Just like you may have used an online only banks like Capital One, and Capital One maybe not 100% online, but something like that. Marcus is 100% digital bank, 100%, which means there's like no physical branches. It offers savings accounts, and it offers like loans. It's a very strong revenue generating business, and they have like ambitious plans for other things. And it's 100% built with it's all automated, meaning there's an extremely small number of people who have to look into and make decisions. When we go and apply for a loan, say on the Marcus platform, it pulls in data from various great companies and things like that, and then makes decisions. The whole idea is to be as efficient as possible with evaluating if what kind of interest rate should a person applying for loan qualify for, based on their credit history or their financial resources and things like that, right? The involvement from human would be extremely limited, and this has been only possible to build in short span of time and make this kind of an impact, because it has been strongly focused on engineering. So there are like more engineers in Marcus than there are any other business people or anything else. It's like almost a tech company within Goldman which had worked on this product. Just gonna pause there for a quick sec to see if anybody wants to ask any questions or share any of the thoughts so far on what we talked about. I see a few people who are still joining in. We'll keep going, and we'll have plenty of time. In a few minutes, I'll stop the presentation and we can keep it interactive. Okay, moving on. Um, this is just a snapshot of the various teams we have within engineering. You have legal, compliance, and consumer and wealth management, which is focused on such as the markers product I was talking about. Human capital management is our human resources team, the tax team, so on and so forth. Again, you don't have to remember anything. Just to give you a snapshot of when you say engineering, a lot of times the engineering teams could be aligned to a specific team. They're working on either the markets product, maybe they're working in the global markets where we are trying to open up our risk models for everybody to use, so on and so forth. Or you could be working in a core platform team, what we call core engineering team, such as myself, where we are building platforms that all the other engineers at Goldman can use to build their financial applications. And with that, I think this is the last of the slides. Last of the slides on Goldman Sachs engineering and what I wanted to introduce. The next topic is really the core of this workshop, right, which is cloud computing at GS. I would actually like to hear from, let me see, there's a question, there's a comment from Solomon. Let me read that. I've always thought GS to be a bank. Does having an engineering team means this team build legacy banking applications for GS? Okay, Solomon is asking precisely the question I'd like to answer, right? I'm trying where the need for engineering comes into finance at GS. Right. As I was saying, Solomon, without engineering, we wouldn't really be in a position where we are today with it, right? I mean, it may be obvious to say, like, for finance, for example, you need to build some software and things like that, and you need engineering. But that's like talking about it, say how it was 10 years ago. Yeah, engineering was there. It was something that you needed computers and things like that. But we're talking about way beyond that. What we're talking about now is engineering is actually helping us launch new businesses, new products, which would be completely impossible to do with this kind of timelines and cost without this. So the same Marcus product, like the bank I was talking about, if we were trying to do this 10 years ago, say the old way, you'd have like tons of people in from the banking industry, from various aspects, and a small team of engineers, and probably it would take it like 3 years or something to launch the product, even with its bare bones thing. And when you apply for a loan there, it probably would have gone through a human chain and some automated systems, a combination of that. But that's not what we did with Marcus, because we knew that the market is so competitive for like online digital banks and all of these in the finance world, that we have to be extremely cognizant of the user experience. As a consumer, they have so many choices today, so why should I come to Goldman's Marcus.com, right? And if I want to be profitable, I need to build it and market it in a short frame of time, and I need to do it with small amount of resources, not spending like I used to spend maybe 10 years ago, right? And that's where the leaders at Goldman decided that we will use technology to enable this business, right? So they went 100% on cloud, and that's where our cloud journey, I shouldn't say it started with that, but it took off in a big way, right? What they did for Marcus, and similarly for some other products like this, is that they first assemble a huge team of very strong engineers, right? Not business people, not operations, not banking. Their core focus is we need a strong engineering team that needs to build a strong product using the latest and greatest in technology, where it is from an end customer perspective, but also to maintain the software, it is as it should be as less dependent on humans as possible to do routine things. Where humans should be involved are something which are of high value to the system, but the routine things such as like maintenance of this, or comparing some data and churning out some things, Nothing should be done by humans, which are very routine in nature, right? Only highly value added functions is what should be done by humans. That was the idea. So thanks, Solomon, for confirming that. It's clear now. But this is an area I myself was, even though I was at Goldman, I being internally at Goldman, I did not quite realize the transformation of the role engineering played at Goldman. Since I've been there, I think a little too long, over 10 years, I think 12 years in February. It was sometimes hard to see, right? We being referred to as, yes, you are in engineering, yeah, you're in technology, we need you, kind of a thing. Businesses, having that kind of a mentality to treating us as equal partners at the table, and saying, actually engineering will be the key differentiator and leader for us. Without that, we can't really. So it's a truly a partnership now with any businesses that engineers are able to do, which is why we would like to compare our engineering talent, our engineering experience, to any other strong engineering firm out there. Could be Google, could be Apple, right? Just that their domain is not finance and our domain is finance. So to answer another question that people ask me is, what kind of people would Goldman like to see in engineering, is anybody who's a strong engineer, right? A person who wants to code, who wants to do data analysis, all of this, but they also should have a passion for finance. Then it's a win-win combination, right? That's the kind of focus we have. Cool. Let me pause there before I go deeper into the cloud computing thing. Um, I wanted anybody to share their understanding of what do they understand of, when we say cloud computing. Obviously, people have heard about Amazon, Google Cloud Platform, Azure, all of these major cloud providers. A lot of buzzwords around cloud today. Would like to hear from some of you guys. I don't want to put anybody on spot, but Michael, Mariam, you guys seem to be, on the video. Do you guys like to spend a minute or two giving your perspective? What do you understand of it? You may be coding, you may not be, doesn't matter.
Sure. So, what I think about cloud computing is that instead of storing a lot of information on your personal computers, you sort of store it up in the cloud that can be accessible to the entire company all at once on remote servers rather than your own personal system that could be difficult to store. And we basically depend on Amazon, AWS, and such other platforms to actually store this data and then query it out. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's definitely one strong use case. Um, Matthew has the question: was it Amazon's cloud service that crashed and shut down many companies' operations for a few days? I will answer that. It is Amazon that was impacted, and we were also one of those guys impacted and struggling to kind of contain the damage there, right? So just to continue on Mariam, what you said, and I'll come to Matthew's question as well in a second. What you described, Mariam, is really exactly one of the early reasons why cloud computing took off, right? There were two things. You talked about storage, right, where people wanted to store data in some place in cloud and be able to access it from anywhere easily, right? But there's also a need for compute in the same way, which is essentially saying, a computer, right? Now if you and I want to buy a computer, it's an investment, but still, like, maybe $500, $1,000, depending on what we need. We will invest it because we know we will could use it for a few years and things like that. But think about enterprise, or if you have a startup, let's say, right? And your startup, you're struggling to find capital to invest into it. And if you want to say build an app and you want to run the app, you need these computers, right? And the typical approach, I don't know, 15 years ago would have been that company, right, no matter how small or big, would have to invest in buying some computers and running their software there. Right now, that's a very, very expensive proposition, especially for a small firm which doesn't yet have that kind of a money, right? Because I may have to be spending, like, I don't know, $5,000 on a very big server, and then I have to pay for all of its electricity usage, all of them. But the fact that I don't know how much my app is going to take off. How long will it take for it to gain a large client base, user base. I don't know that. That means I'm spending that much money on maintenance upkeep without really having any real customers or users using the app, and me not getting any revenue yet for, I don't know, for a few years, right? And that's where the cloud computing need came, where people said, I don't want to spend thousands of upfront dollars, and I want an ability where I can grow and shrink the capacity I want based on my need. If my business is doing well, I want my cloud, my compute capacity to increase, right? If my business is lean, say, maybe it's not holidays, it's a lean shopping season, then I don't want to spend so much on the thing. So that's where the promise of elastic or the cloud compute came to picture. Amazon introduced it first. They call it EC2, or elastic compute, or elastic cloud compute. I always keep getting confused with the thing, but essentially they launched this in 2006 and was the very first cloud offering, and it entirely changed the world in a very dramatic way, right? So what it means is, instead of somebody having to spend thousands of dollars in investment in this cloud thing, I could go and tell Amazon, hey, I want a computer with this kind of specifications, this much of memory, CPU, all of that stuff. It should be running Windows or Linux or whatever it is. But I'm only going to pay you by the hour, right? If I use it only for 5 hours today, I'm just going to pay you, I don't know, 50 cents an hour or something. So if I'm only using it for a few hours in a month, because I'm a startup, I'm still building, I'm still kind of gaining momentum, I'm only seeing a bill in maybe hundreds of dollars, or maybe even less, rather than thousands and thousands of dollars of investment thing. Let me pause there. Does that make sense? Like, just like what it did for storage, it did for compute, where you could do compute on demand, right? You can buy compute on demand how much you want. You want more, automatically it'll scale out. You want less, it'll automatically scale in. That's the promise of cloud. And this is how it all started, right about 2006, when Amazon introduced that. Now, anything else, Mariam, Michael, or Francesco, you'd like to add to this thing? No? Cool. Let me answer Matthew's question. Yes, so we did have an issue with Amazon's a few days ago, with some internal networking devices getting too much overloaded with some network traffic that they still couldn't explain where it was coming from. But what the impact was limited to one region, which is called North Virginia region, actually. So the way Amazon works is, and this is another great beauty, which is the reason why I want to talk about this issue also, and thanks Matthew for bringing up, is another good reason for people wanting to do cloud computing is this whole idea of resiliency for your applications, right? So if you have a really critical application, let's say some stock, Robinhood, for example, right? I don't know, maybe it's not a good example, but some application like that, where people would like to use it to trade cryptos or something like Coinbase. Now, they would like that application to be available 24/7, because the global markets as a whole never sleep, right? You could be waking in the middle of the night and you heard some news and you want to buy crypto. So they need the applications to be running at that kind of extremely high availability. And if you have your application, let's say, in just running on one machine, right, you can't say that your application is highly available, because there's always a chance that you lose power or something happens to that machine, some hardware issue comes up. So typically, even you or me as a small startup, we would have like the application running in multiple computers. So if one thing is having a problem, the others can pick up the slack, and there'll be no impact to the end customer. Similarly, if you just expand this whole concept to a huge data center, right? If you look at Amazon, may have like multiple data centers where their computers are running, their physical computers are running, right? In what they call these data centers is availability zones. I mean, let's not not worry about the terminology and things like that. But the idea is they build the cloud for this kind of high availability, and the way it works is they first have these geographical regions. For example, North Virginia is one region they have. Oregon is another region. Similarly, they have Singapore, Sydney, India. They have a couple of regions. And the idea is within these regions, they can have multiple data centers where your compute infrastructure can be hosted, right? What it means is this Coinbase application, for example, can say that, hey, I want to deploy my applications in the North Virginia region, right, which is close to most of my East Coast customers. But at the same time, I also want to have a copy of the customer or the application running in the Oregon region for two reasons, right? One, my West Coast customers will benefit from being closer to my Oregon, servers, right? So the latencies, they will see the slow, the responsiveness and the time it takes to load the site and the app, all of them will be faster. The closer you are to the physical servers, the faster things will work, right? Just laws of physics. The second reason is if something were to happen, like catastrophic failure were to happen in one of the Amazon regions, like exactly what happened a few days ago, where the network devices issue caused impact to large number of services, the US East 1 region, as they call it, or the North Virginia region, was severely impacted, but there was zero impact to the 20 plus other regions AWS had. So if Coinbase had the same kind of setup that we talked about, they could have continued with zero impact because their application was also available in Oregon. And granted, some people, I mean, they may have picked up a little bit more slack. And granted, some people in East Coast may be seeing a little bit more slowness in the responsiveness, but at least it would not have created this kind of a massive havoc, right? So with cloud, it comes down a lot of times to having these choices. There are like tons of choices, tons of decisions you have to make, and that's the beauty of it. It at least allows you to experiment without having to invest a lot of money into this thing, right? Without having to have your own data centers. Like imagine if Goldman wanted to have its own data centers in so many regions. It's a hugely impossible task, extremely expensive task. Like we have only 3 data centers for a company of this magnitude. We have 2 in New York, New Jersey regions, somewhere close to that, and we have one recent one in London, right? But that's it. We don't have any data centers we are using in a dedicated way in Asia regions and things like that, even for a company of this magnitude, because it's extremely expensive. So the proposition of cloud is this concept that you can use their data centers and you can tell, like you have choices of like where your applications are running. Is it one region, multiple regions? You get the benefit of impacts like these issues not affecting your application, but also you are closer to your end users across the world, and you can automatically distribute let's say the website traffic to say go to the servers which is closest to the user who's requesting that information, so the responsiveness is good for them, right? Let me pause there and ask Matthew, does that answer your question in terms of like what impact was and how we dealt with it?
It does. I just had one more question.
Sure.
About operations. And so whenever the servers shut down and you switched over to a different one, does that did that higher latency have any effect on just kind of like the trading patterns within the speed? Because I know that low latency is something that's pretty important for making trades.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that because I have not seen any such things, right? I can only talk about what we have done at Goldman, right? In Goldman, we were impacted, but not our trading applications and things like that. There were certain payment applications where they were seeing delays because they wanted to first understand the problem, and eventually many of the big applications, they were able to switch over to the other region. They were available in 2 regions, the Oregon and North Virginia, and the North Virginia region was the one impacted. So most of them, not all the applications, but at least most of the important ones, critical ones, were able to switch over to that. So there was some delay in getting things done. but there was not like a severe business impact, thankfully, right? And from trading perspective, I don't know if anybody else, any other firms had similar experience with their trading systems impacted. But it's also possible that many applications yet don't do trading with cloud. We are getting there. We will get there soon. Like Goldman Sachs, I know that we don't put our trading servers on the cloud yet because to reduce the latency between our offices and the Amazon's data centers, right? That few extra milliseconds of, I don't know, it could be 20 milliseconds, 30 milliseconds latency could be a big deal for trading applications, exactly like Matthew pointed out, right? So we are not there yet, but I do know that things will change in that direction. For example, 2 weeks ago, we most of our team, we were at this conference that AWS organizes every year. It's called AWS reInvent. It's a cloud computing conference that they do like a week-long affair. And there was a keynote by Adam Selipsky, who is a CEO of AWS. And there were two key announcements, right? One, he talked about NASDAQ, which is our one of the stock exchanges, right? The New York, it's not the New York Stock Exchange, but NASDAQ is a more digital stock exchange focused on technology companies mostly. It's also based in New York, but it's different from NYSE, but it's a key player in the US capital markets, right? They made a bold announcement. I think it was a CTO who came on stage, or a vice president. She is a woman in the top leadership who made a bold commitment that NASDAQ is going to be 100% cloud by 2024 or 2025, something they announced. So basically, they will exit completely out of their own data centers in the next 3 years and be 100% on cloud, right? So imagine a stock exchange like NASDAQ making that announcement, which means we are beginning to see a shift in terms of what we are able to do with cloud, even for applications that are heavily regulated, but also require extremely low latencies, like these kind of trading applications. So there is a lot of focus from financial firms for sure. The next 3 to 5 years, we would expect to see a transformational change in terms of going to cloud from various financial firms, not just Goldman Sachs, including Goldman Sachs. All the major ones will be making a lot of investments, and that's exactly what I personally learned as well. I was part of one of the customer roundtables at AWS reInvent conference, where it was focused on financial services industry participants. So people from HSBC, MasterCard, Citi, Capital One, we were all like chatting on our cloud journey and strategies, and everybody had similar problems that we are trying to solve. And some were doing better than others, but it was very clear everybody was extremely focused on this cloud journey. Over the next 3 to 5 years, we should expect to see a huge change in that. Let me see the other questions from Solomon and others. I can think of many use cases of cloud that GS may leverage. Kindly touch on some of them in practical terms. Also, what is the security concerns for GS that most banks have due to the sensitivity of financial products? Excellent question, Solomon. So kindly touch on some of the use cases for cloud. I'll talk about in two dimensions, right? One is new businesses, and two, practically, what does it mean to say a developer at Goldman Sachs, right? I'm not like building new products all by myself. I'm just a developer at Goldman Sachs. Just assume that persona for a second, right? So the first part of new products, right? I talked about one product called Marcus, right? And there's another product similarly called transaction banking. I won't go into details of what it does, but essentially it tries to manage the free cash that companies may have, where they want to park the money, but also make some interest, but it needs to be available for them, readily, just like your savings account, but with that pays you more interest than just a savings account thing. Now that's again 100% digital, 100% cloud native product that was built from ground up. Again, The cool thing about that is same kind of approach as with Marcus, right? Like the focus was getting together a strong team of engineers. And here is an interesting thing, right? Usually you think a new finance products launches, the head of that division will be somebody who has that strong finance background, and he's from that kind of a thing, right? But what they did was they took a technology leader and made him the head of the transaction banking business. His name is Harish, right? And he was just an engineering leader, a top engineering leader, but they put him in charge of the whole business. That's how much Goldman believes that technology and engineering is actually going to bring new lines of revenue for us, without which we would not have been possible. And we're already seeing that, like, when you look at Goldman's publicly available annual reports or quarterly reports, look for transaction banking, and you will see how much of a significant impact they're already making to the revenue the firm generates, and to the ultimate bottom line as well, right? Again, all of this is 100% cloud built on AWS. And there are, like, I think 80% of that organization is going to be just engineers, and rest of them could be legal and compliance and other aspects that need to be there. Solomon, does that answer your first part of the question of some of the use cases where Goldman can leverage cloud? Yeah. And the second one, right? This is my own personal experience. I've been a developer, a team manager for a number of years at Goldman. And one of the things we were always struggling, right? Like, is if I want to evolve my application into being, more resilient and, improve the performance, the software that I could use was kind of limited by choices, meaning I don't want to be too technical because I don't know the audience, but I'll just give a small example. Please bear with me a little bit here. I wanted to use a database to store my payment information, right? My payments data, but I wanted the database to be available 24/7. Okay. But at the same time, it had to have, like, work like a strong relational database. Like, it was actually a Sybase, for example, if somebody may have heard of that, right? The problem with that is we, at that time, like the on-premises, what we call on-premises is like the data centers of GS. The only choices for database we had primarily were either you use Sybase or you use MongoDB, which is a vendor product, and Sybase is a different vendor product. MongoDB is a NoSQL kind of a database, and Sybase is a SQL database. The problem is MongoDB was available 24/7 for us. They deployed it in 3 different data centers, and it's a more modern software, so it was available 24/7. But it didn't have the strong relational database characteristics like Sybase had, which is great for, like, transactional data. But the Sybase offering we had was only available 24/5 at best, right? Which was not helping us. So we had to really go to Mongo and retrofit that for our use cases. So it's not really where I could use the right tool for the right job. But if I had to make the same decision today, when the firm has opened up the whole world of cloud computing, to me, I would have made a lot better choices. Granted, I have a lot more choices and have to make a lot more decisions, but at least I'm actually in a position where I'm looking at different tools and trying to pick the right tool for the right job. So I would have probably gone with, just as an example, if somebody knows Amazon, is like Aurora is a great example of a very highly reliable relational database, but it's also extremely available and very cheap as well to use, right? But had no such choices. So this is just a simple example how, as a developer, it completely opens up a lot more doors for me to build an application or enhance my application in terms of its usability, productivity, availability for the in terms of, like, being always available for the users, and the maintenance of it as well, because I'm able to use more modern stack. So essentially, it brings a lot of agility to the software development, just because I have so many more avenues open for me to utilize, right? And that's where I was most interested and most excited, and that's how my cloud journey started. I was telling you at the beginning of this presentation, right? I didn't know anything about cloud about a year and a half ago. That's when I actually I had to take a small break when my kid was born. my second child was born, I took a parental leave. Goldman had policy of 4 weeks of parental leave for fathers and mothers. So I utilized that, and had a lot of great time raising my little one along with my wife. And but I was also rethinking about my whole career. It kind of gave me a pause to think about my whole career. What should I do next, right? I've done a lot of things, but what is the next exciting thing to do? And that's when I started hearing about Goldman's focus more on cloud and things like that. And then I started learning on my own. I got so fascinated by the possibilities. So the moment I joined back the firm after my parental leave, I started looking for where are opportunities at the firm in the cloud. And before too long, I was able to find the right people. And they said, hey, Dallas is where we are growing hugely in the cloud platform. And I changed my career track. I relocated from Salt Lake City, Utah to Dallas. This was about a year ago which I relocated to. So again, the point of that is that it just opens up doors for anybody that wants to do in this one, right? I hope I answered Solomon's question there. And let me see, since we are running closer to the end of the presentation, what is the main purpose of GS using cloud computing for? We are using cloud computing in a number of ways. One, as someone earlier mentioned, like storage and compute, right? We want to take load away from our data centers and reduce our actual physical data centers that we are maintaining and owning, and move them into cloud for the most of our work that we want to do, right? Second, we also leverage all the services that they provide. Like for databases, I don't want to run my own Sybase and my own MongoDB or whatever. I want to leverage what the cloud platforms are able to provide. For AI work, ML work, for example, Google has a very strong foundation in it. So I want to use the Google Cloud Platform to leverage their services so that I don't have to build a lot of them from scratch. I want to focus on building models with my expertise rather than building software to actually run the models, right? Because those guys have already done it. I want to use that thing. So the list is endless. I mean, what we can use in cloud is really, it's up to our imagination. The real question is, what is it that you can, or maybe the easier question to answer, what is it that you cannot do with cloud, right? Like I said, at the moment, there are certain applications like trading, which are still a little bit hesitant to go to cloud because of the increased latency, but that is also very, very quickly changing. So the same thing in 3 years, I expect to see a different answer. So to answer in short, there are a lot of practical examples we can talk about, but there's only a few things that you cannot do with cloud at the moment. Let me see. Develop AI for predicting stock price. Yeah, that is just one small thing, but there's endless possibilities with cloud. I'm just kind of being conscious of the time here. Is AWS the only cloud services GS is using? How do you recommend candidates to take the cloud certification exam? Hey, Leon, thank you for that question. Definitely one of the things I wanted to cover as well, because I went through that journey personally myself. So first, AWS is not the only cloud provider that Goldman Sachs is using. However, AWS is the primary cloud provider at the moment that we are using. So I would say 90% of the work that we are doing in the cloud right now is with AWS. However, we're also working very closely with Google and Azure to leverage them for niche applications. We don't want to be married and tied to just AWS or someone, right? The whole premise of cloud, anybody will tell you, right, that you want to use the right tool for the right job. So we want to leverage GCP for its strengths. We want to leverage Azure for its strengths. For example, a lot of our workspace applications like Office, Outlook, all of these things, they are of Microsoft heavy. So it would make sense for us to leverage Azure for them. There are certain things such as Google's BigQuery AML space, which we want to leverage GCP for. But at the moment, I would say predominantly our focus is, and a majority of investment is with AWS. And the second part of Leon's question is, how do you recommend candidates to take the cloud certification exam? And I'll tell you personally what I did, right? And maybe that'll help you guys as well. One, I found that these certification exams are actually really helpful. Now, at Goldman, they may not really be looking for people who have certification or not. It may not make much of a difference. But I know that, at many places, that gives a validation that you having a certification. That means you do understand what it means to use AWS in that capacity, right? But the second benefit and most important one I found is that in preparing for the certification, I actually learned quite a bit. When I was not preparing for the certification, I was learning, but there was a lot more focus on things that really mattered more day to day when I was preparing for the certifications, which is why I thought like it was great that I prepared for the certifications, because I was able to learn so much more, which I would not have been without preparing for those, right? What I did was, first, this is how I did my journey, right? The most fundamental is the cloud practitioner exam that AWS has. It costs $100 to register for that thing, but it doesn't need you to have any hands-on experience with any AWS or any software, any cloud provider or anything like that, right? All it takes is for you to read the white papers or that AWS has. They have some documentation on cloud, what is AWS, how does it work, just at a very high level, right? So with an investment of maybe like a few days, you'd be able to easily pass the cloud certification exam, the cloud practitioner exam. From then on, I moved on to the cloud solutions architect exam, which I had to learn a lot of concepts. Basically, I had to understand the breadth of AWS services, not going into depth of any of them, but I had to understand breadth of what it offers in various, dimensions of databases or messaging or software development platforms and infrastructure, things like that. And then just 2 weeks ago, when we went to the AWS reInvent event, the first day there, I went and took the developer certification as well that AWS offered. And the fact that I had been doing some hands-on work at Goldman the past year in this new team helped me prepare for that exam a lot more. But the resources I used were AWS website, AWS training and certification website. They actually mentioned in the conference that they have significantly improved the free training that is available on their AWS training and certification course. If anybody is interested in any of the certification, I would strongly recommend go and leverage the free training. But of course, I also utilized other platforms like A Cloud Guru and Pluralsight, which Goldman has given us like free access to Pluralsight as a way to continually learn. And I did my own personal subscription to A Cloud Guru, I think, which you don't have to spend all the money. There's a lot of free training that AWS themselves have or other channels have, which should be more than enough for you to learn and get the certification from AWS. The Cloud Practitioner, Solutions Associate, and Developer Associate, depending on your specific areas you want to focus on. Last questions. Cybersecurity cryptography talent in high demand with Goldman Sachs. I will say cybersecurity extremely high demand. Cryptography may be very, very niche kind of a thing, right? We're not yet big into crypto, but cybersecurity, like when you talk of cloud, the first and foremost thing anybody will have to talk about is security. Even if Amazon says security is their first principle, right? So you guys may have heard there was a Log4j exposure that came out just a week ago, I think about like last Thursday or something like that. A lot of systems were impacted. You may be impacted with that even without realizing it. For example, I went to Costco to add a new line to my T-Mobile account, and their systems were using a company called Citrix, and they were affected by the Log4j thing. So for a long time, like many days, the systems were not up, and freaking they couldn't add a new line because I wanted to use their iPhone deal or something, but it didn't happen because their systems were down, right? So that was an issue. So cybersecurity is at the forefront. So if somebody is interested in like security and they put in the investment to learn, you will be in extremely high demand in the cloud space. We are at 9:54. I'm looking at Brian to see since we are a little over. So I'm just going to pause there and see if there's any final things that we need to cover.
Yeah, the room will end at 11, so it's up to you if you want to just use up the time or not. But yeah, technically we are over time, but it's up to you.
Okay. So yeah, just a few more minutes. I'll just leave a few of the comments, right? I'm happy to help, and if you guys if you guys want to connect offline as well in guiding through the cloud journey. like I said, I personally was, I changed my career track to cloud. So I'm really passionate about it. As a developer, I see the benefit of it. And the more I work in this, the more I realize how vast this is. And this is going to be the big thing, if it's not already there, for any firm that is seriously going to be in the business for the next few years. Right? Everybody will have to be moving to cloud if they're not already. Of course, a lot of startups, like, nobody does non-cloud, right? Everybody is cloud from day one. I'm talking about the companies that have been there for a while already, who have not yet taken big steps to the cloud. That will all change over the next 3 to 5 years. Lastly, do you have a STEM background? I do, but I'm not a computer science major by any means. I actually have a background in electrical engineering. That's what I graduated in. However, when I started doing my electrical engineering back in India, the very first year we actually started programming in a language called Fortran. If someone has ever heard of that, basically it's a scientific programming language that do. And their focus was, how do we use Fortran to solve like math problems in electrical engineering space. But I really got interested in programming in general, not specifically electrical engineering. I kind of somehow did not connect to it as well. So I had to do a lot of side on my own sort of a learning. Like, I learned C language at that time, and eventually Java language, and that's how I came into it. But definitely, that I think that engineering background helped me. But I think here is where the cloud shines as well, that there are so many opportunities now and so easy to get into it, that you do not need any strong engineering a degree or anything else to be successful as a cloud engineer. I personally, I've seen a small number of examples where people who didn't have this kind of backgrounds, but they are still extremely successful. And one last thing I want to leave you note with is, Amazon, in fact, announced that they are enhancing their free training and certification website with courses specifically focused on people who may have no software development background, like, and get their careers launched in cloud in a way that they choose. Right, this could be people who may be working as I don't know, in grocery store, or somebody who may have never done any of this kind of software thing, right? But they want these people to be able to learn and use cloud to the way they see fit, and actually have very successful careers with them. And I strongly believe that it's possible now with cloud. Before that, it may have been a little difficult journey, but with cloud, with so many possibilities and so many ways you could do your career without even having to go into a physical office, right? Remotely you can do. There's a lot of things people can do. If they are interested in this space, they can get into it, no matter what their current background is. Degree, no degree, STEM, no STEM, it's still highly possible. Okay, with that, I really appreciate you guys taking time to listen to me, and bring up really great questions.
Thank you so much for that.
Organizing this.
Yeah, this was really great, and thanks for everybody who asked the questions. I really enjoyed making it more interactive. And if somebody does want to reach out to you, what do you recommend? I know you're on the Slack, so they can DM you on the Slack, but I guess would that be what?
That they could do, or they could connect on LinkedIn as well. That's fine too.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. I hope everybody enjoyed, and I definitely did. And this was a great way to kick off the Saturday. And for everybody in the competition, we have 5 hours left. So good luck on your building, and don't